engaging in here is a continuous conversation between us as leaders and as two countries of CARICOM, which started in 2016. I'm paying the favor today because in 2016 when I went to Jamaica, I had the small contingent and there was a huge Jamaican cabinet contingent discussing more or less the same issues for the same reasons. So today we have had a couple of hours of discussing our circumstances, and I can tell you the outcome of that has confirmed that the circumstances of governing Jamaica, the challenges of Jamaica, are virtually identical to the circumstances and challenges of Trinidad and Tobago. And that being so, the decisions that we have been taking, for those of you who have been observing what's been happening at the CARICOM level, you would have seen an intensity of activity at the leadership level, Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Antigua, Guyana, Suriname, which is a little unusual. And I simply want to indicate that this is a commitment from the current pool of leadership that time is not on our side. And we have discussed a number of areas where we can cooperate more collaboratively, where we are committed to doing so, and we've had some very interesting actions to come. And I would like to allow our guest to indicate what he has been experiencing here in Trinidad and Tobago, and I trust that he's enjoying his stay with us, the casual stay as well as the work that we did this morning. So Prime Minister Holness, you have the floor to address our team here in Trinidad and Tobago and the Jamaican team who will be following us later on.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Rowley. First, let me say how pleased I am to be in Trinidad and Tobago, a place where I consider home. I have family here, many friends here from the University of the West Indies. I wasn't a part of the carnival scene, but subsequently I have made friends. But of course, you know, our two countries are very close. And so even though this is an official visit, and it has come with some amount of ceremony, which, by the way, I must say that the arrangements made for the visit have been excellent. And the Jamaican delegation is very, very pleased and very happy with the reception and the effort that the government has made in that regard. I'm also very happy to be here celebrating with you the 60th year of your independence. We have just completed our celebrations around our Independence Day and Emancipation Day, celebrating 60 years as well. It is an important time in the life of any country, particularly countries like ours, which have come through the colonial struggle to get our own independence, to determine our own future. It is a celebratory period, obviously, but it is also a period of celebration where we reflect and look at what we have achieved. And as I've been moving around the country, not too much now, I've only been here for a few hours, but I've seen that you have started the preparations for the celebration. And they look pretty much like what we were doing in Jamaica a few days before. The national colors are up, and the music and the culture and so forth. And that's really good. So I'm happy to be here to join you in celebration of this great moment in your history. Whilst I am here, however, we have taken the opportunity to enhance our cooperation and to look at areas in which we could, by greater effort, make even more benefit mutually for our two countries. 6 years ago, I invited Prime Minister Rowley to pay an official visit to Jamaica. This was against the context of concern in Jamaica, and I suspect in Trinidad as well, about our relations, trade and otherwise. And I must say that when Prime Minister Rowley visited Jamaica, we were very happy to receive Prime Minister Rowley. The business sector, I believe they had put on an event for you, the private sector, and it started a movement towards enhanced cooperation between our two countries. As a result of that, we were able to create a pathway to deal with trade complaints, and today we signed a memorandum of understanding on that cooperation, and that pathway, I believe, has been very useful for both our countries in improving trade relations. We today discussed important issues to do with the free movement of skilled labor, structured movement of free labor in CARICOM. You know, there's been, I would say, sometimes more talk than action on the realization of the CARICOM dream, a dream that great men like Eric Williams would have wanted to see materialize, realizing that the greater our cooperation, the mutual benefit for all is assured. And I want to commend and say thanks to Prime Minister Rowley for backing up the expressions of fulfilling CARICOM with actual action in legislation and implementation to recognize legislatively certain skilled areas of labor that can move freely in CARICOM. The CSME is only going to materialize when you not only have free movement of goods, but also free movement of labor and free movement of capital. That allows for a more efficient allocation of resources. It allows for the expansion of trade and opportunities, and it brings life and meaning to this business of regional integration. We oftentimes want to see ourselves as competitors. That's healthy, that's natural, but there's another dimension. We have to also see ourselves as partners, and that is also healthy and beneficial to all of us. And in that regard, we looked at the issue of national security. And we looked at national security from a multidimensional perspective. Cybersecurity, that's a domain in which we have to pay attention. But then there is the real issue of crime and violence. And we delved into that issue. But there is a commonality which we have observed, and Prime Minister Rowley has been speaking on this matter. I saw several of his statements in following the Trinidadian press, and one of the statements that caught my attention was Prime Minister Rowley's declaration that violence is a public health issue. And we have been saying this in Jamaica as well. And it is important that the Jamaican public and the Trinidadian public come to a realization that countries like ours, at our stage of development with our economic profile and our culture and historical factors, do play a role and probably explains why violence is used so often, or is the choice of action to resolve conflict in our society. We really need to take a public health approach in looking at why is it that violence features so heavily in our social transactions and how we resolve conflict. To this end, Prime Minister Rowley and myself, we shared notes on what our respective governments were doing. In Jamaica, we have put in place a National Commission for the Prevention of Violence to really study the pathology and to coordinate the government's actions towards a more systematic approach in treating with violence. And Prime Minister Rowley is doing similar, and we are going to be collaborating more closely on this issue. In addition to much more closer collaboration and information sharing to deal with issues of crime, cross-border and transnational. So on the issue of national security, I would report that we are making significant progress. We also discussed areas where we have natural talents in culture, sports, music, carnival, and athletics, and we have agreed that we're going to collaborate much more closely in these areas. So we will be inviting schools from Trinidad and Tobago to participate in some of our sporting competitions in Jamaica, and we will be exploring ways in which Jamaica can benefit from the incredible costume design talents that are here in Trinidad and Tobago, amongst other areas of collaboration and cooperation. We also spoke, going back now to business, about bilaterally enhancing cooperation with regards to our process of business registration. And I think that is an area that could really create an explosion in trade and commerce between our two countries. There is absolutely no reason why a company registered in Trinidad and Tobago should not be noticed as registered in Jamaica, and vice versa. And so when we go back, we will be looking at our respective legislation, which, by the way, a process already exists in CARICOM, and the discussion has already begun. But Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago would probably be more aligned and more advanced in terms of legislation that could move the process forward by us enhancing and fast-tracking that bit of cooperation. So generally, I would report that aside from my visit being in recognition and of the 60th anniversary of your independence and participating in your celebrations, it was also designed to bring our cooperation closer together, and I wish to report success in that regard. And again, thank you for the amazing preparations and arrangements that were made for the Jamaican delegation. Thank you, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Holness. I trust that you would have gathered from the synopsis given by Prime Minister Holness that Trinidad and Tobago's initiatives in holding the CSME as a front burner item in CARICOM is receiving the requisite support from the largest component of the CARICOM market outside of Haiti. And we expect that the commitment that we made recently in Suriname to remove non-tariff barriers, given the energies we're putting into that now and the role that non-tariff barriers play in suppressing the effectiveness of the single marketed economy, could now see some peeling away of those things, and work is going on there, and we trust that the market will benefit from that. With respect to the encouragement of the movement of capital in the country, I trust that our population in Trinidad and Tobago would view Jamaican investment in Trinidad and Tobago as always welcome, as Jamaica welcomes Trinidad and Tobago investment, whether it is banking, in food preparation, in food distribution, whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, what this CARICOM thing is about is creating the largest possible market for a supplier. And Trinidad and Tobago in CARICOM has carried the argument continuously that we are stronger together on every issue and in every respect. Whatever the issue is, once we act together, we are stronger. And we saw that at the OAS meeting, Summit of the Americas, the other day in the United States, where we could easily have ended up with all of us going there, having a day out, having our pictures taken, and record of our presence, and nothing to come out of it. We had a meeting in Los Angeles, and at that meeting we sat down and said, we are stronger together, we speak with one voice to the United States, and the outcome of that is that we do now have some serious practical work going on, noticed by the Office of the President, led by the Vice President, on CARICOM special issues, finance, energy, and food security. So we are going down that road, and as a participant of the national championships in Jamaica, I'm looking forward to our youngsters receiving that invitation and participating in the world-famous Jamaica High School Championships, and that we believe will bring us closer than anything else at the moment as we look at the business sector. And so I'd like to open the floor for a few questions, if you may have for Prime Minister Holness, maybe for myself, and after a few questions, we'll thank you very much.
Drew Brown, TV6 News.
Yes, please identify yourself and place your question.
Drew Brown, TV6 News, to either Prime Minister. Given the conversations that you have referred to when you first visited Jamaica, Prime Minister, in terms of trade and so on, what would you say now would be the state of trade relations between Trinidad and Tobago and Jamaica at this time?
On a scale of 0 to 10, I would say that we are about a 8 now.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were at a 2. Because why I went to Jamaica, if you may recall, excuse me, when I went to Jamaica at that time, it was in response to an actively organized boycott of Trinidad and Tobago's produce and manufactured goods. And when you bear in mind that Jamaica is our largest market, and those who manufacture in Trinidad and Tobago, if they do not sell their manufactured produce out into CARICOM, then the unemployment and the loss here is ours. At that time, the situation was such that what turned out to be bureaucratic obstructions to trade were being mishandled, and the Jamaicans were annoyed that we were not responding to their complaints and that they were being hard done by, and a boycott was being organized by a group that shall remain nameless, who incidentally, as the Prime Minister said, when I got to Jamaica, the way it was dealt with, after we had a meeting with the cabinet and my team, which incidentally on that occasion included a member of the opposition in Trinidad and Tobago, we had so diffused it in the meeting, realizing that it wasn't a political difference that was fueling this, that the visit turned out to be an event that the private sector organized to be a lunch. And then the key thing in the lunch was who really was organizing the boycott. So, but it turned out that we settled our differences, and for me it was a very satisfying trip too, because I found that I had so many Mona friends from my university days in the Jamaican cabinet that it made life quite simple. From the Speaker of the House, former Speaker Pernell Charles, who is now retired. His son is now a member of the government of Jamaica. Paul and I we were on campus together. He was a union activist, and I was a student. But I knew him way back then, and a number of persons, Minister Samuda.
Yes.
We were trade ministers together. We worked around the Caribbean together. So it was relatively easy for me to convince the Jamaican cabinet that we were dealing with something that was soluble. And since then, our trade relationships have continued to grow and improve. And today, actually, what I should have done was to apologize for the absence of Minister Paula Gopi-Schoon, who should have been here, but unfortunately she's in isolation. She's picked up COVID. So she's done a lot of work, and she's the person driving this process and making a lot of progress with it. But unfortunately, she has to withdraw at this time.
Just to add on to the Prime Minister Rowley's statement, the posture and the voice of CARICOM is changing, and I think changing for the better. I think there is a genuine recognition that freer and fairer trade helps all, and that allowing for the free movement of goods, free movement of labor, and the free movement of capital creates a synergistic environment that expands the bounty for everyone. So it's the statement that you made regarding the decisions in Suriname, that these issues of non-tariff barriers and bureaucratic obstacles, that once you start to see above those and realize that they really don't create a long-term sustainable economy, and then you start to translate that into legislation, into policy, and into the bureaucratic action, then you will start to see your economic growth take off. Now, in the case of Jamaica and Trinidad 6 years ago, we had issues with Jamaicans coming to Trinidad. We had issues with Jamaican goods coming to Trinidad. And I invited Prime Minister Rowley precisely for the point of view that the issues were not necessarily at the prime ministerial cabinet policy level. Sometimes the issues are at the bureaucratic and administrative levels, and having a greater understanding, developing greater trust, building a partnership can help to unlock some of the institutional barriers to trade, travel, commerce, and finance. And so this is what this is about. And it is working. And in a world of uncertainty, where there can be an exogenous shock, there can be something over which our economies have no control and have nothing to do with, we will need each other more than ever. And so it is important that there is strong relationship, government to government, regionally, to be able to withstand shocks. And what you would have seen coming out of the Summit of the Americas is a greater concentration on the region, that we need to be stronger regionally. We need to secure our food supply. We need to secure our energy supply. Equally, we need to secure the labor that we'll need, and we need to secure the financing that we need. And once that becomes the realization that we need to work together as a region so that we can become resilient and sustain ourselves against external shocks, we will have a clearer path to the prosperity of our people.
I may want to just say, you would have observed that the United States has just made a statement about focusing on the flow of arms and ammunition into the Caribbean. That didn't come about by accident. We all pressing our point to the United States as a supplier of most of these deleterious items, indicating to them, as Prime Minister Holness quite clearly said this morning in our meeting, that when he became Prime Minister of Jamaica, he thought his biggest challenge would have been Jamaica's economy. But it is turning out that his biggest challenge is the national security challenge of Jamaica, which is the same thing we are facing here. Huge national security challenge by a flow of arms and ammunition organized by not stupid people, people who are very well aware of the circumstances around which we live and in which we live. And that is something which we had to impress upon the United States as CARICOM, that you cannot turn a blind eye to us, where every CARICOM country is in this predicament, and your suppliers and your diaspora people can just flood us and we just get the results of it, including, as you know, the what you call them, the ones they send back home, the deportees, as well as the use of the technology in cyber, where the United States has the capacity to be more effective in following up who's doing what. And it is something that we are cooperating on, and we will continue. Today, we signed on to that MOU, and we had some discussions for further, closer cooperation and information sharing between Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago on this particular matter of the external forces and effects of small arms and assault weapons in our country coming from the United States.
Just to add on to what Prime Minister Rowley has said, it's amazing when we exchange notes on the national security front, the similarities and commonalities, not just on the violence front, but on the elements that fuel it and enable it. So weapons are an enabler of violence, how they get into our countries, and the people who are financing them and sending them. There is just an incredible level of commonality. And so, whilst we won't say too much on what we're going to be doing, but certainly along the lines of collaboration and sharing information, we will be able to have an impact. But from a political standpoint, especially geopolitically, we need to amplify our voice regarding the flow of small arms and light weapons into our region, which, as we always say, we don't make guns, we don't make ammunitions, but they are so widely available in our society.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Jensen Levin with the Newsday. Prime Minister Holness, you spoke of similarities in terms of crime in Jamaica that Trinidad has. Our, excuse me, our acting commissioner of police recently said that there's an issue with guns coming through illegal ports. Is that something that Jamaica is facing as well?
So the importation, the illegal importation of weapons into Jamaica comes both through our legal ports, our established ports, and that is something that we have to address. But it is also coming in on boats coming from South America or from Haiti. So it comes in both. But the one that we are really concerned about are those that are coming in through our legal ports. Because if you think of it, it is where you have placed your most institutional resources. And if it is coming in through your ports, then it speaks to a high level of possible corruption in the port system and in the customs system. So we're concerned about that. I won't speak too much about what we are doing, but in recent times we have integrated customs into our national Get the Gun strategy and other strategies that we have. And as it relates to the illegal importation through unregistered ports or boats coming in, we have increased our surveillance and our offshore patrolling. And in recent times, we're having success in stemming that flow.
That same issue as well. You also mentioned an action crime plan. Could you give us some of the successes that came out of that we could implement in Trinidad, if not already implementing?
So our crime plan is multidimensional. It's under the ambit of what we call Plan Secure Jamaica, and it looks at all elements of national security, crime being one element of national security. We are having successes in building out, for example, our cyber domain management. That is one area that I would recommend for all countries, especially small island developing states, to pay attention to cyber. That is the new frontier. We are having success in our ability to have domain awareness and control of our economic zone around Jamaica and managing our borders. The challenge, of course, is managing what I call enterprise crime, criminal gangs whose sole purpose is to infiltrate state organizations, corrupt institutions, and use that power that they gain to facilitate illegal trade, whether it is narcotics coming through the trade routes from South or Central America, or human trafficking, or uncustomed goods, fake and imitation goods. All of those are part of the domain of the enterprise crime, and we need to pay close attention to that. But then there is also the issue now of what we call the domestic crimes, which are featuring now more prominently in our societies, and the use of violence in these domestic crimes. So you would see intimate partner violence, domestic violence, family members killing family members. We recently had a situation in Jamaica, which I really don't want to talk about, but it's in the media, where a family member, killed several members of his family, and then you have violence in the disciplining of children. So all of this kind of violence really makes the quality of life that people enjoy less. And so our multidimensional strategy deals with the cybersecurity, it deals with the security of our borders, the strengthening of institutions to protect the institutions and to protect the economy. And then now we really now have to develop, which is where we are not strong. We simply do not have the institutional capacity built out to deal with violence. And that will require new legislation. It will require an increase in the professionals to treat with it, because when we speak about violence, we tend to stop at the act and not follow through on the trauma. So we tend to want to focus on the perpetrator of the violence, less so on the victim and what they suffer. And so we will have to build out an entire articulated structure of the psychologists and the social workers and the other support mechanisms to treat with the victims, so that they don't go on to produce perpetrators. So we break the cycle. And that's an entirely new system that we will have to enhance and create.
Now let me thank you, Prime Minister Holness, firstly for coming and for being such a wonderful guest to us, sharing all your experiences. And we look forward to you continuing to enjoy your stay here in Trinidad and Tobago and joining us in our 60th anniversary celebrations.
Thank you,
all
Prime
very
Minister.
much.
My great
Thank you.
pleasure.